All right. So when we talk about control, okay, control setup, now you have to know control setup in any experiment. It is used to compare with other setups to see what? To see if the change in the independent variable. Do you still recall what's the independent variable? Type into the chat if you recall. What are the independent variables also known as? Okay, something your school uses, your teacher uses, it might be different from the term I'm using here. So what do you know about independent variable? Yes, very good. Thank you. So it's actually the variable that changes. We also call it the change variable. For example, the amount of light that we want to shine on a particular plant, all right, to explore how it affects photosynthesis, something like that. So we want to see how, when we vary the independent variable, okay, how does it affect the dependent variable? Dependent variable is what we measure. It's the data that we are collecting. For example, just now I mentioned about light, being shone onto the plant. So we want to explore photosynthesis. How do we know the plant actually photosynthesizes a lot? We can't be asking the plant, right? The plant cannot talk to us that way. So what we can measure is the amount of oxygen it produces. Have you all done this experiment before? When you have the leaf, inside water? Have you all tried that? Some schools have done it. Some schools have not. Okay, if you have not to worry, you will be doing it next year for sure, because it is under the topic of energy, okay, where you explore photosynthesis. Okay, Wayla, have you done that before? Never. Good. So that means you will try it out next year. Okay. All right. So drawing of the control setup sometimes is required. Okay. Sometimes you're not required to draw. Okay. You need to know how to draw. Okay. So in order for you to be able to draw the control setup, you must know what is the change variable. Yep. So the control setup must be drawn with this change variable removed from the setup. So when we explore, let's say, the amount of light, so that means that I could have another setup. I totally do not have any light for the plant. Can? So you have to understand why is that so? Because we want to be very sure that it is really the light that causes, the production of oxygen, for example, in the plant. Now, common question, okay? Common question on control setup. Why is there a need for setup B, for example? So they don't tell you that setup B is actually a control setup. They will ask you immediately, okay, why do we need this setup? Okay, some question, they will tell you, okay, that is the control setup. So why is it that we need a control setup? Similar, right? Similar question, but phrased differently. And then the next one, draw and label a control setup for the experiment. So that is also possible. Sometimes questions come out that way, okay, where you're asked to draw the control setup. Now, so how do you answer it? If they ask you on this, okay, why the need for setup B? The first thing you do is to say that, okay, that is actually the control setup. All right. Okay, so after that, you explain. It's used to compare and confirm, that the dependent variable, okay, is like that because of only the change variable and nothing else. You need to understand, okay, there's a standard way of replying or standard way of answering the question. This is a very standard kind of answer. You just need to know the format, how to write it, okay, identify the change variable, identify the measured variable, you will be able to get full marks. Okay, so later on, you have to type in your answer. Is that clear? When we go through questions, right, you type in your answer, I will tell you whether you have gotten it right or wrong. And I'm really depending on your answers to decide whether we are going to play Blue Card or not. 1 game or 2 games, it depends on how participative you are. Okay, those of you who have not turned on your camera, you need to do so. Yeah, remember it is compulsory. We talked about this before, right? Okay. So Same thing, if they just ask you directly, why is there a need for control setup? You see that it's very similar kind of answer, similar to the one at the top. Okay, other than this part is not there, act as a control setup, the rest are actually the same. So draw and label a control setup for the experiment. In order to draw, okay, you must change or remove, all right, the change variable in the setup. This is to prove that any change in the result, right, is only due to the change variable and nothing else. No other variables in the experiment. Okay, Isabel, you logged in with 2 accounts, right? Or you sign out one? Okay, can. Jia Qi is still trying to come in. It could be the same Jia Qi, right? Used to be in our class, remember? Okay, anyway, he's still in the waiting room. I have been trying to let him come in for the last 15 minutes. Oh dear. All right. Andrew wanted to find out how the number of leaves on the plant affects the rate of absorption of water by the plant. So he conducted an experiment by placing 2 similar plants in identical jars. Okay, so you have 2 set up here. Okay, the jars are identical. They have the same amount of water. Okay, then he placed the 2 setups next to the window for 2 days. Now, you are supposed to propose how to draw a control for this experiment and label the diagram. Of course, I cannot tell you to draw now for me, right? But I can ask you, what would you propose? What would you propose for me to draw in this control setup? Type it in. Hi, Isabel. Yeah, now you turn on the camera, I can see you. Okay, so how do you propose? What do you think I should be doing when I draw the control setup? Remember, just now we did talk about it. In order to draw the setup, right, you must identify what is the change variable, remove that change variable. So what is our change variable here? Can anyone identify? The variable that changes, what is it? Yeah, very good. I see responses coming in. Okay, Raymond, what do you think? And Yihang, what do you think is the variable? You see? Yeah. Yes, very good. The number of leaves. So if I want to draw my control setup, right, what should I do? I should remove the leaves, right? Yep. So yes, it is correct. I'll remove the leaf. I'll draw something that looks exactly the same, but this time round without the leaves. So the control setup is drawn this way. You'll have to first identify, okay, identify which is the change variable. Okay, so you want to draw control, identify, so the variable that is changed in this experiment, in this case, is actually the number of leaves. Okay, next, draw the setup without the change variable. That's why I've drawn this setup here without the leaves, because the number of leaves is actually the control setup. So I just remove it. Can? Are you okay with this? The rest must remain the same. Now, this H1 and H2, right? Okay, they have shown you this way. Some of you thought that that's the change variable, but they said each containing water at the same height. Okay, so it's the same amount of water, actually. Okay, Ken? All right, thank you. Yeah, yeah, wait, look, that's right. You just go and come back, right? That's correct. Your message came out a bit late. Yeah, but I saw that you left just now. which is good. Okay, so just to remind all of you, should you need to go to the washroom, you just go. Okay, there is no need for you to wait for me to give you permission. Yeah, like Wayla just went, right? He left a message for me. He went off and he came back very quickly. So that is good. Thank you so much. Now, next one. What is the purpose of the control setup? There's a standard way of answering actually. Okay, if you want to make sure you can score the marks, right, you just have to make sure you follow the keywords, what is important to be there. You need to put in certain things, which is the change variable, as well as the measured variable. So in this case, what is the purpose of the control setup? We have a control setup just now without the leaves, right? So without the leaves, what is the purpose of having a setup without the leaves? Okay, remember just now when we were going through the notes, we actually did look at, how to write, okay, the answer for the control setup. So these are the suggested answer. So you always will have to answer this way. It actually helps you to score points. So control setup over here is used to compare and confirm. You see that I put these words in red, compare and confirm that the something, which is the change, which is the measured variable, all right? The measured variable is like that because of the change variable and not due to other variables in the experiment. So if you can have these statement being used to answer that question, it will be good. Okay, so it is used to compare and confirm that something is due to another thing and not because of other variables in the experiment. All right, so if you look at this answer here, okay, you would have some answer inside your mind, right? So I want you to think about it and then look at my suggested answer here. Think of how similar it is for you and how different it is. Yeah, you can let me know. So the control setup, in this case, is used to compare and confirm. Do you see that these are the words that you've seen just now? Compare and confirm. Yeah, that the amount of water left. Amount of water left is actually the measured variable. We did say, right? The measured variable is only due to the change variable. What is the change variable? It's actually the number of leaves. Okay? So this is the change variable. So it's really due to the change variable and nothing else, nothing else. But don't write nothing else. You have to write it such that it is acceptable for science marking. Not due to other variables in the experiment. You need to include this. How many of you already know this? If you don't know this, it's time for you to know. Okay, so it's used to compare and confirm that the measured variable is due to the change variable and not due to other variables in the experiment. It's always answered this way. If you can remember all these keywords, right? You see, the answer is always such that I can highlight for you. You will be using these words, okay, up to this point. Then put in the measured variable for the question. Okay, also include the change variable in the question. The change variable you can identify. Then after that, all these will be the same and not due to other variables in the experiment. So the words that I have highlighted are going to be there all the time. Okay, whatever I did not highlight is what you must identify from the question. Is it okay? Okay, now we're going to try. We're going to try again. Okay, so now I want you to start thinking, read this question, then you tell me which to tick. Yeah, Pamela wanted to find out if leaves can give out water. She prepared a setup as shown below and placed it near a window. So Pamela's teacher told her that she would need a control for her experiment. Okay, so start thinking again. What did I say about drawing the control? The control setup must be drawn, okay, by changing or removing the change variable, right? And everything else stays the same. So think about it. Then after that, let me know in the chat. All right, let me know in the chat which one